All right, we are in 1 Thessalonians 5 tonight, if that's where you want to turn and meet me while you're turning there. Just a quick reminder that in 2 Sunday nights, on the 5th Sunday night of this month, will be our singing night, and we'll have the little finger foods and snacks and all of that. And Bailey mentioned that as a reminder last week, and just as a reminder for all of us tonight. So just remember that. That'll be a pause in our study as we're going along this. And that'll be a combined service as well, so the teenagers will be with us. And that's just, everybody had a good time with it last time. It's just good to be able to gather together and sing, to make a joyful noise. But our singing is to teach one another, admonish one another, and to encourage one another. And there's just no better way to be able to do that within the assembly than singing. So the Lord gave us that, and I'm glad that our song leaders are making that a point of emphasis for us. So we're in 1 Thessalonians 5. We're going to look at verses 1 through 11. For the past several Sunday nights, and this will be for the foreseeable future, we're looking at the second return of Jesus. What does the New Testament have to say about it? There may be some things that are alluded to by the Old Testament, but we're going to be mostly within the New Testament and everything that's there. So we're focused on this second return and just specifically what's going to happen. So last week in chapter 4 was kind of just the order of events, the sequence that Paul tells us what's going to happen by inspiration of the Spirit when Jesus comes. So the living will not precede the dead. Jesus will return. It'll be loud. It'll be boisterous. Everybody will see. Everybody will know. It will not be a secret. And think about a contrast with His first coming. Not everybody knows. Not everybody outside of Bethlehem knows that He's there. That you're not reaching into the furthest parts of the Roman Empire. When He comes again, though, the entire world will see. The entire world will know. They will hear. There will be no secrets in that regard. It won't be a secret return, but it'll be very public. And of course, so you have the blast of the trumpet, the sound of the announcement of the archangel, and the shout of the Lord Himself. Then those who have fallen asleep, be there. He'll descend with all of that. The dead in Christ will rise. Then we who are left will be caught up, and we will be with the Lord forever. And we emphasized this point last week. A lot of the discussion that surrounds the second coming makes us nervous, because it's unknown, kind of uncertain. And to a little bit, for some of us, it makes us scared. It makes us afraid. But it's interesting that Paul says at the end of that, you need to encourage one another. That it's supposed to be a source of encouragement as much as anything else. Now we're going to see why that should be the case in 1 Thessalonians 5. So we're going to read the first 11 verses. Just do what we've done before. We'll read it, and then we'll crack it open and take it some of the highlights piece by piece and ask some questions. So this is what Paul says by inspiration of the Spirit. Now concerning the times and the seasons, brothers, you have no need of anything written to you, to have anything written to you. For you yourselves are fully aware that the day of the Lord will come like a thief in the night. While people are saying there is peace and security, then sudden destruction will come upon them, as labor pains come upon a pregnant woman, and they will not escape. But you are not in darkness, brothers, for that day to surprise you like a thief. For you are all children of the light, children of the day. We are not of the night or of the darkness. So then, let us not sleep as others do, but let us keep awake, be sober. For those who sleep, sleep at night. Those who get drunk are drunk at night. But since we belong to the day, let us be sober, having put on the breastplate of faith and love, and for a helmet, the hope of salvation. For God has not destined us for wrath, but to obtain salvation through our Lord Jesus Christ, who died for us so that whether we are awake or asleep, we might live with Him. Therefore, encourage one another and build one another up, just as you are doing. So it's, again, this discussion, each passage ends with the positive. This needs to be something that you are encouraged. This is a form of building up, not tearing down. Does it need to wake us up if we're not awake? Sure, it needs to do that. But the main focus of this is to encourage one another, to build one another up, And we mentioned this, the reason being is so that we just don't get blinded by what's in front of us with the temporary, that we don't put down roots in places that we have no business putting down roots, and to encourage one another to a certain extent. A better place, a better time, and a better person are all coming. And that's what's important. And that's what we need to keep an eye out. So, one quick note that you need to have if you're taking notes on this, or if you're circling, or if you're writing in the margin of your Bible, or whatever your preferred method is on any of that, if that's what you do, is that phrase, Day of the Lord. Day of the Lord. That is a very Old Testament phrase, especially through the prophets. Both major and minor prophets like the phrase, the Day of the Lord. Anybody want to take a guess at what that would have been in the time of the prophets, what the Day of the Lord was, or what they considered it to be? Go ahead. Okay, judgment. Something that's happening within a historical context. Judgment on who? Okay, people. So whether it's His people, or whether it's a Babylon, for instance, or Nebuchadnezzar, or an Assyria. So it doesn't matter, Jew or Gentile, it would be considered a day of judgment. And what the prophets would do is employ a lot of language, figurative language. You know some of this from Acts 2 when Peter quotes Joel. The day of the Lord, the moon will be darkened and turned into blood. The sun will be darkened, the moon will be turned into blood. The vengeful day, the wrathful day of the Lord. Those types of images. And so that's what Rachel had to mention a second ago. It's all about judgment. We'll talk about judgment pretty soon because we're going to need to see what that is and everything. But according to verses 2 and 3 of what Paul had to say, what will this day be like? What does he say in verses 2 and 3? What will this day be like? He gives two images, and then he says something. He quotes a saying, if you will. And I don't know if it's a motto, I don't know if it's creed, but you notice it, at least in your text, that it's put in quotation marks. So he describes this day with two events, something that we can wrap our minds around and comprehend it. And then there's a saying sandwiched in between the two. So what will this day be like? Okay, so the very first image, it will be like a thief in the night. Okay, so if you're creating I use this image a lot with you, but if you're creating a sandwich, the two pieces of bread, the top layer is this thief in the night, and this bottom layer is the labor pains or labor pangs of a woman a pregnant woman that just suddenly appear. And then he says no one escapes from it, right? This is just what's going to happen. What does he say is in the middle of those two statements? Okay. All right, so peace and comfort. Now, that may be something that he's quoting from the Old Testament and the false prophets that are around Israel or Judah at a time where you had a prophet of God saying judgment's coming, the day of the Lord is coming, you need to be ready. And you had a false prophet that would have just said, no, everything's fine. You just continue on, business as usual. You can really find that in the book of Jeremiah, when Jeremiah is doing his very best with the word of the Lord. And it's just every time that he gave a message, it was countered. No. We're going to be fine, be okay. There's peace, there's security, and all of these things that matter. So again, thief in the night, this statement that's peace and security, and then labor pains on pregnant woman. So, two questions then that I have. What's supposed to be communicated with these images? What's supposed to be communicated with this? Out of all the things that he's using, he's talking about the second return of Jesus. What is Paul, what is the Spirit trying to communicate about this day? Harry? Okay, all right, so that is one thing that we do know about. Let's just pretend these two events are real and they were happen. A thief isn't going to call and say, I'm coming at 10:02 p.m. Make sure everything is unlocked. He or she's not going to give a heads up that this is what I'm going to do. Nor does, when a woman is pregnant, those of you that have been fortunate and blessed with pregnancy, it's just when the baby decides, it's kind of what you end up saying. The baby decides, that's what's going to happen, and we'll just go from there. It's not going to be a heads up. Even doctors, as much as you may be able now with modern medicine to be able to say, we're going to do this, we're going to do that, we're going to project it, it's still a little bit beyond your control. So it's the idea no one knows. Again, that's what Harry's mentioning. Yes, ma'am.
Also, it's not going to be stopped.
Okay.
Because once a pregnant woman goes into labor, that's it.
That's right.
She's coming whether she wants it to or not.
All right. Which is what Paul means by no one escapes. So just as a thief comes in, so if once he's there, now I understand all the other things that we think about with self-defense and what have you, but he's come, he makes up his mind, she makes up her mind, that's it. Same thing with a pregnant woman. Once it starts happening, it's going to fit, it will go all the way to its completion.
It won't be a bad day for those in the light.
Okay.
They have the faith, the love, they're ready for it.
Okay. All right, and that's the key, and I want you to hold on to that, but you're right. He's going to make a contrast, day and night, drunk and sober. He's going to make contrast. Either way, if you happen to be in this category, for lack of a better way of putting it, it's not a bad day. Because you have other things. But the biggest is you're ready for it. And we focus on just simply, when is it? And it's more of, just be ready. That's the biggest thing. There is no concern if there's a readiness to it to a certain extent. What else is communicated with this? With these events, with the thief in the night, with labor pains as a pregnant woman. So we've again had, no one knows, but once it happens, it's happened. No one's stopping that. That train will leave and that's it. What else is communicated with this? You think of anything else that would be communicated? Yes, ma'am.
People, even people who are wicked and rely on money, and everybody everywhere, even sometimes in war, people sometimes have a sense of peace and security if they're not like in the head of the battle. So I think he's saying that nobody's gonna think they're about to be, peace and security means everybody's, wherever they're walking, Christians are always going to be at peace, but I think the wicked think they're at peace, and they have a sense of security that their money, or whatever they rely on, their booze, or whatever it is, they feel like that's keeping them secure and at peace.
Okay, so really to summarize, and you make really good points, is that in between that there is this false sense of comfort that everything's just going to continue on. All right, I woke up today, I ate my breakfast, did my lunch, came to church. You had a regular routine. You had a Sunday routine. Tomorrow, if you're off of work, you'll have a kind of a holiday routine. If you go to work, you'll have a work routine. You just have a routine. And the idea of this peace and security is that just things are going to continue on. It's just endless. People will live, people will be born, people will live, people will die. And in between, they may get married, have a few kids, make a career, but that's really all that's going on. This is just what's happening. So the biggest thing in all of this is that this is another event. This is a statement I've used with you. Christianity knows that history is linear. When we think of routines, you think of it as a circle. This is just what I do. Wake up, you have your routine. I have my routine, everybody has it, but it's just endless. It's endless. Peace and security, it's just endless. This is what I'm going to continue to do all the time. And Christianity comes in and says, nope, it's linear. And you need to know that there's a hard cutoff, and there's nothing you can do about it. It's not stopping. It's planned. It's predicted. You just need to know that at some point, it's all going to end. And that's what we mentioned at the very beginning, that we've been around long enough that we know two things are going to happen in our lifetime. Either we pass away or the Lord returns. That's it. That is history in terms of linear. And that, Ms. Doris, go ahead.
That when that day finally came, that they could, hey, help me out here now. Since you've been over all this time, do something for me now.
Sure. No, you're right. The parable of the 10 virgins, 5 were wise because they prepared, and 5 were foolish because they thought they had enough and didn't bother to check, didn't bother to do any of the other things that are there. So the why of all of this is preparedness. It's preparedness. And the way that I look at it, so just Elisha's confessional time at the moment, is that when severe weather's coming your way, that you get the weather alerts and it's kind of be prepared. You ever seen those? You see it here? Think how easy it is to kind of just dismiss those. Some of you are thinking, no, you shouldn't dismiss them. It's just kind of easy to gloss over them, be winter weather ready, be summer weather ready, kind of be prepared, don't dismiss. But we get so many of them, they become so routine, except for the one who had to go through the event. And from that moment, they will always be ready. They will always be ready. Here's the thing. We've already gone through one event. Jesus already came. What's to make us think that He's not coming again? And yet we live that way. Jack?
Like it said in Thief in the Night, I mean, we need to be ready 24/7. We don't know when He's coming back.
Sure.
And if we're not, we're going to get caught
Sure.
with our hands in the cookie jar, and
Sure.
it's not going to be good for us.
Well, go ahead, Mr. Orrs.
There's not a single one of us in this room that's promised we're going to get home safely tonight.
Sure. I mean, the list goes on of all the things that we do know. And the question is how much does it translate into the here and now? Does what He has given, the available information of what is coming down the line, has it translated into the here and now? I'm not saying walk on eggshells. Not saying be morbid and say, well, today may be the day. I'm going to live like I'm dying. Not any of that. Live your life. Have joy. Have peace. Raise your children. Influence your grandchildren. Love your neighbor, etc., etc. But just remember, history is linear. It's linear. So I want you to take a quick glance over verses 4 through 8 for me. Take a quick glance, and this is the segue, good segue into the here and now. Take a quick glance over verses 4 through 8 and tell me some of the things that you see. I've already mentioned that Paul makes a couple of contrasts, but I'd like to develop those a little bit further because it's interesting that the Spirit moves him in terms of inspiration to make these contrasts, but then he also mentions a couple of other details. So tell me, what are some things that you see throughout? Scott?
Sons of light, and should not be caught in the darkness.
Okay, so again, light and dark, sons, children. Okay, Scott? Sleep and awake. So there's one I forgot. So you got three. So you got light, dark. If you didn't hear Scott, you got sleep, awake. There's another one. We've already mentioned it. You got drunk and sober. All right, so you have these images in all of these cases. So let's stop right there. What are Christians then? And taking those three, what are Christians? They are, so Doris already mentioned this in terms of supposed to be children of light. So on the other two, these are just softball questions, but to get us some...
They're not sleeping.
They're not sleeping. Now let's take this for a moment. He can't be talking about literal sleep. So what is he talking about in using these images? Could be ignorance, for sure.
Inactive. Being on guard.
Okay, being on guard. All right, being on guard.
Inactive.
Inactive. Okay, inactive. All right, Doris. They are prepared. Okay. Unprepared. Okay, so you still have that. Go ahead. Okay, being prepared, being ready. Great answer. All right, Harry. Okay. Okay, going sleepily along, just kind of existing. But preoccupation, if you didn't hear what he said, maybe preoccupied is one way. Either way, Paul makes, the inspiration of the Spirit makes a hard distinction about who we are supposed to be and who we are not supposed to be. And children of the day, people who are awake, and people who are sober. And let's take that sobriety there for a moment. We know he's not talking about literalness in terms of being sober versus drunk. He does in other places, but not here. So what does he mean by sober? Being serious. Okay, that's a good one. Harry. In control. So that is one difference between drunkenness and sobriety. One is in control of whatever it may be, and in this case, of oneself, versus out of control, or just kind of loosey-goosey with that. What else can you think of? Clear-minded. So it's That may go in hand, Harry, with what you mentioned a second ago about being preoccupied, that other things are there. And again, we're not talking about sin here. This is just stuff that's just kind of taken our attention and diverted us. So I like what Heather had to say. It's clear-mindedness is with this. What else? The way that we would describe it in terms of drunkenness is not using that word, but under the influence of something, right? That's kind of the idea. Sobriety is lost because you're under the influence. Think of this. A Christian is not under the influence of the surrounding area. Not under the influence of the thought, not under the influence of the practice or the behaviors, not under the influence of this or that. But you're not just clear, you're not just in control, but you're not being guided by anything outside of you. Yes, ma'am.
Thinking about walking in light and walking in darkness.
Okay.
What is the big difference? When you're walking in darkness, you cannot see and you stumble. You cannot see where you're going. You have no light. Nothing around you is illuminated. When you're walking in light, you see clearly, like Heather said, everything around you. So there's no way you can be fooled about what's going on around you, and you're not ignorant of the fact that Jesus is coming. You are a Christian, you know. If you're not ignoring it purposely, and then in 9 when it talks about he died for us so that whether we are awake or asleep, we might live with him. But I was looking for oh man, I can't see it. I was looking for where it said about wrath, that we would not.
We'll get there in just a minute. It's in verse 9.
My point I was going to make was that clearly he didn't make Christians to not be aware of what their surroundings were.
And that's what's here. I know you were raising your hand.
I was just gonna say that we should be steadfast,
Sure.
holding our ground against whatever's coming, not just being prepared, but being actively so.
Yeah. So you're right. It's not just being prepared, but actually participating in that preparedness. Not somebody else preparing me for it as much as I prepare myself. And then, Heather, you make 2 good points, especially with the idea that someone has not been fooled. And that is what peace and security is. And if you go back to the time of Jeremiah, you go back to the time of the false prophets, people were fooled. Now, whether it was ignorance that led it or one way or the other, they were still fooled by whatever was there. We are not fooled every morning when we wake up to think that life just continues on and will continue on to my children, my grandchildren, my great-grandchildren, my friends, my family, whereas others are. And a big part of that is what we discussed last week. I don't want you to be uninformed. So he eliminates the ignorance that is there. And then the preparedness. So day, night, sleep, wake, sober, drunk, not under the influence. And so one of the evaluating questions to ask in terms of translating into the present, how would you describe yourself with your spiritual life? Night, day. Under the influence of God, under the influence of something else. In control, out of control. Prepared, unprepared. How would we describe it? Go ahead. Yes, ma'am.
Well, in the greater catechism, it begins with the day of the Lord.
Sure.
Which we discussed as, a day of judgment on the people. And then it's contrasted in verse 8, let us who are of the day. And again, that's contrasted with those who are of the night.
Mm-hmm.
And so keep in mind that those of us who are aware of the coming judgment, there is a way that we are supposed to live. And again, for that, we want to rest in faith and love,
Mm-hmm.
and hope, all of these things. So if we are people of the day, we are people who are aware of the judgment that is coming. And we are not to live like those who are completely oblivious, unaware, everything's good, peace
Yeah, and you mentioned that in being prepared, being awake, being aware. And while you were talking, it just can't help but to go to that little piece. And we always, again, I know it's our calendar and everything, and so December is kind of the focus of the birth. But how many actually are innkeepers? Was he aware of who he turned away when there was no room at the inn? Because if we say if he was aware, what do you think he would have done? He probably would have given him his, right? I mean, we think of that. And yet this is the complete, this is it. It's not, I don't want you to be this person when he comes again. Because he is completely unaware. When they go and register in the city of Bethlehem, because they had to do the census, and the person's writing their name and Joseph is giving the family information. Do you think that guy knew who he was? Do you think he knew his wife was and who she was carrying? Anybody know that? I mean, there are very few in this, but this unawareness, and it's not that they're drunk or that they are, have lost control in a literal sense. They are just under the influence today. Today's a special day, but it's because Caesar said there needs to be a census. Other than that, that's not really a significant day. The day of the Lord shows us that it's a significant day. How many of us will be innkeepers when the time comes? How many of us would be the one taking the registration of the family who just doesn't think, oh, I'm Joseph, this is my wife Mary, and our unborn baby, and we're here to register, because that's what he had to do. How many are ready for that? No one was ready. It's just how many people did he encounter throughout the whole thing? I know the biblical record is silent on it, but it still gets you thinking. Yes, ma'am.
Going sideways on this, but my uncle Jess at Christmas time, he says a lot of people this time of year think it's sad that there was no room in the inn for Jesus. But I find it more sad that there is no room for Jesus in people's hearts.
Yeah. Yeah.
I think that applies also to
It does. It does. And you mentioned that last bullet point. What does this mean for the present? How do you prepare? Paul just uses language from another letter. The breastplate of what? Faith and love, and the helmet of what? Salvation. Helmet of salvation. The hope of the helmet of salvation. Why is it a breastplate? Why not the belt of truth? Why not the shoes of the gospel? Is it because he's guarding what you just said? Heart and mind. That's the purpose. What is the preparedness of the one who belongs to the day? It is the preparedness of the one who's awake. Heather's point in being clear-minded, you've guarded your mind and you've guarded your heart. Why? Because again, no matter how much information was given via Old Testament prophecy, how many in their minds were looking, much less ready for the first coming? How many in their hearts, again, you mentioned this, and we know this, how many within their hearts are even ready for that? How do we maintain children of day? How do we maintain our sobriety in a world gone mad? How does this translate into the present? It's a helmet that guards your mind, and it's a breastplate that guards your heart. The very two things that should define a Christian and does define us. Very quickly on this. Verse 9, Heather, you alluded to this. There are two things that Paul says. One is not and one is. So what is not the destiny of the Christian? And I'm not saying that God has determined this. We all know that everybody is will. We know that everybody can fall away. So this is not, when we use the word destiny, this isn't talking about this is what. But if God's ideal, we stay faithful, what is not the destiny of the Christian? God has not destined us for wrath. Why? Okay, he's above. What else? Oh, of love. I'm sorry. Okay. All right. Because he is of love. What else, Bob? Okay. So the Peter passage. He's not willing that any should perish, but that all come to salvation. What else? Again, think about this specifically for the Christian. God has not destined us for wrath. Yes.
When I read that in the context of written, it just jumped out at me that there could be a argument made against another doctrine. Here it is, kind of the whole thing in a nutshell. We're not destined for wrath, but it kind of is implied that if we're not ready
Yes.
But we're not destined for wrath, but even though if we're not ready, that doesn't mean that can't be obtained.
That is correct.
I might be wrong.
Go ahead, Bob. Okay, that is the, so when, and that is just to balloon for just a moment and dip our toe in this. When Paul mentions election and predestination in other places, this isn't saying that you were determined to be this at this moment, at this time, for the rest of your life. That's not it. The destiny is exactly what Bob just said. For the person that gives him or herself to Christ, faith and baptism, God's plan for that person is to be with Him. Now, that could change, but that is the ideal, or that's the plan. Go ahead.
I think it's important to point out that when we talk about this kind of stuff, the day of the Lord, the innocents and the righteous can still die on the day of the Lord.
Yes.
Because it happened in Israel, it happened in Judah, it happened at every major point when God said, I've had enough, and you're doing wrong, and I'm punishing you.
Yes.
And we see, I think it's in Ezekiel where he says, I want you to go and mark the foreheads of everyone who sighs and cries over the state of Jerusalem. And how often do we do that? How often do we look at our society and just kind of go, why? Not just be disgusted, but actually bored
Yeah.
over it. Because we just kind of live here, we've gotten used to it.
Mm-hmm.
And that's not a good thing, but our physical bodies aren't necessarily going to be preserved on the day of the Lord. Every country, every kingdom, every nation has its own.
It does. Everybody does, and it's a historical context, and then at the end, everybody will in that regard. So it's not wrath, and just think about it for this purpose in terms of us walking in light. So you mentioned this, Heather, and I know others. God didn't save us in Christ, the waters of baptism, so that we can be judged and casted off forever in eternity. That's not the destiny of the Christian. Think about that for a moment. He didn't save you just so that He can judge you and condemn you. Now, that doesn't mean that, again, we've talked about it ad nauseum here, doesn't mean that if I'm not living right and doing right and being faithful, etc., that isn't going to happen. But what does He want? What is the destiny? No, not children of wrath, but notice this in the specific language that He uses, but to obtain salvation. You are saved, and you are not saved. You are saved spiritually, but we still live in this world where people believe in peace and security. The day of the Lord is to be a day of salvation, not a day of judgment for the one who is faithful. So why did Jesus die for us? This is an interesting thing. Very quickly, I know we focus forgiveness of sin, so forth and so on. But verse 10, who died for us so that whether we are awake or asleep, we might do what? What does life, present and future, supposed to be about? Live with Him. What is the goal of today? What's the goal of tomorrow? Should you live 50 years, 80 years, 100 years, and all the time in between? Whether you are awake or whether you are asleep, Jesus is the focal point. Whether it's becoming like Him, whether it's growing in knowledge of Him, whether it's looking for Him in the future, it's all about Jesus. That's why He saved us. So, what do we do in the present? You encourage one another and you build each other up. A better Lord is coming. A better day is coming. A better place is coming. The joy of the Lord is your strength. It's coming. Until then, a breastplate of faith and love and a helmet of the hope of salvation. And you keep loving your neighbor, keep being salt, keep being light, and most importantly, keep sharing Jesus. That's what we do. So, in another letter, Paul will tell us, redeem the time. Because the days are evil. Yes?
There won't be any catching up of things that you should have done that you thought you would do.
No, there will be no catching up. That's it. There are no other days after this either. time will cease for it. Just think about that too. Time will cease when the day of the Lord happens. So if you want to take a note and start reading through Matthew 24, that's what we'll cover next, and just get some of the information from there, as that is used to describe the day of the Lord and kind of events that are going to take place. Go ahead. I'm done. If you can come on up. You want to do the prayer and the communion?